Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, 2 weeks and counting as the Red Raiders shift into mock game week mode, and we'll discuss what that entails. We'll also talk Maulers up front along the offensive line and which young guy in that group could be forcing his way into a starting spot next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase with the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you, kicking off another week, and not just any other week, I suppose, as we are de facto into sort of a fall camp wind down as we're into a mock game week sort of session before a real game week is to arrive. It is basically T-minus 2 weeks, depending upon when you're listening to this, to Arkansas Pine Bluff coming to town August 30th. So we're going to get to some of what is coming up over that period of time as we prepare for the season opener. I want to get to some sound from our pair of coordinators and defensive coordinator Shill Wood talking about the integration of so many newcomers on his side of the ball, including himself. We'll get to that in just a moment. Also, offensive coordinator Mac Leftwich talking his O-line. Really interesting thoughts here. He's asked about technicians and maulers among that group, but the way in which he describes some of these guys just interesting to me for other reasons. I'll explain in just a moment, Chris. And, of course, as we're wrapping up another scrimmage just within recent days and looking ahead now to this mock game week kind of setting, things change a little bit. So I want to ask you about that in just a moment. But first, let's go back to Jones Stadium following that most recent scrimmage and take a listen to Red Raider head coach Joey McGuire.
I thought it went really well. I thought we had some explosive plays. Barron hit Caleb Douglas for a long touchdown, so that was good to see. This was pretty much kind of back and forth. Offense did some really good things, and defense did some really good things. Still got to clean up a couple of penalties as far as pre-snap penalties, but overall I was pleased. Our young guys like Leighton Stone again showed up today. I mean, he's a redshirt sophomore, so I still consider him young. He hadn't played a lot in college, but Kelby Bassam made two huge catches. I mean, big-time catches that were really good. I thought Will operated the offense well, and then Oliver Miles came up with we were in a 2-minute situation. Ball was on the 9-yard line, and he came up with a big interception for the defense. You know, this is our last time tackling before we get into not tackling like we'll work on it and everything, but like live tackling against each other. This is the last time we'll do it until we play Arkansas Pine Bluff. So I saw some guys, we got to keep getting better at tackling in space. I thought the guys did a great job. Ben Roberts had a huge tackle on the sideline, in the control scrimmage part of it where we're mixed downs, and I love seeing that. And we saw some guys also break some tackles that were really physical. Cam Dickey, I thought Cam Dickey, I thought Jacoby Williams, and Q ran really hard, really physical, and then Adam showed up today again. He got some snaps with the 2 offense, and I thought Adam Hill did a really good job at running back. We're 2 weeks away. Next week there's going to be college football. You're going to see K-State and Iowa State in Ireland. We're going to get to see Kansas play Fresno State, and then we're 2 weeks away from playing here in Jones AT&T, and we got a lot of work to do, but we're getting closer and closer to where this gets real.
Sort of a transition time now, Chris, as you get into a mock game week. What exactly does that include as we get ready for this thing for real?
Yeah, in some ways, camp is over, like the training camp portion. I think what they do is they try to simulate a week ahead of time what a normal weekly routine would be. I think that really started with a scrimmage on a Saturday night, because your first game is going to be on a Saturday night. And so, yesterday on a Sunday, you bring them in for rehab or anybody that got banged up, and then you kind of go through what it's normally going to look like, and then you'll do it again next week, the week of the game before the opener. And so it's just, again, players and coaches are very much routine oriented. So I even think next week they may take him. I think Joey even said they may take him to a hotel and like kind of let them see, this is what we do. This is our meetings. This is kind of how this is going to go. And just try to, really simulate as much as you can on, because there's a lot of new here. How you did it elsewhere isn't necessarily how they do it here. And I think they want those guys to see that, to feel it, to understand what they're getting into and get them into that routine and rhythm and all that. So they know, because once it starts, other than a bye week, each week and like each day of the week really looks the same. This is when we're going to practice on a Tuesday. This is when this is happening on a Wednesday. This is what a Friday morning looks like. This is what a Sunday looks like. And I think you're just, because it's rinse and repeat for, I don't know, what is 10 out of the next 13 or 14 weeks. And you got some bye weeks sprinkled in there and all those things. So that's kind of what I think that's what their plan is there. But yeah, the physical, not that anybody won't get hurt or that they will not actually be aggressive in practices, but I think they'll try to be smarter and try to manage their guys getting to the opener now after the scrimmage on Saturday night kind of concludes.
I'm glad you bring that physicality part up, and he touched on sort of the tackling aspect of this. And I'm kind of curious, just in your time, covering these camps and watching these things progress from era to era, how that approach to tackling has kind of changed. Because certainly in some god-awful defensive years, Chris, it's very convenient for a fan to ask, were they tackling enough in fall camp? These boys ain't tackling anymore. That's why we stink. I'm not so sure that it's always been the truth, because I wonder as well, about some of the best defenses maybe out there. How physical are they in camp? Is it really any different, or are they just really good football players? So what does it actually look like, and how do you think it's kind of ebbed and flowed, say, over 10, 15 years?
I always put myself in a coach's shoes here, because I don't know how I would particularly handle it if I had like the pen, and because there's going to be injuries in football. This is the sport. It's a game of attrition. And I've talked to coaches before that like beat the heck out of each other up, and there's injuries, and then you have guys, like you have coaches that like really back off and try not to put too much of their guys in harm's way, or try to be really smart about it, or limit those opportunities to try to avoid injuries and just meaningless things. I don't know what the right answer is, and it really lies somewhere in the middle. But some of this just comes down to luck. You can beat the heck out of each other, and like, we're going to be physical. We're going to run the Oklahoma drill over and over and over again, whatever. And then nobody could get hurt, or you could take it really light and not try to put your guys in harm's way, trying to get them to the finish line. And then, you have a bunch of guys get hurt in the first game or something. I don't, whatever. So it's all, I think Joey's a happy medium guy. I think they try to, you can't avoid it. This is football. Like, you've got to run goal line stuff. You've got to run short yardage stuff. You've got to like tackle and be physical and like get after each other.
You got to acclimate yourself.
Yep.
You can't avoid it. And you also got to sort of run to it at the same time.
Yep. That's right. That's right. So I think over the years, because sometimes I think we could make the argument, like back in the 2-a-day era, sometimes 3-a-day era, tougher, we're not giving them water, right? All that stuff, all those stories that we hear, that folklore we hear over the years. But I think guys genuinely sometimes would get hurt as camp would go along, after a week and a half of like being out there twice a day, where you just get tired, and then that's when an injury happens. So I think that, but I think in the modern era, everybody tries to be much smarter there, but you can't avoid it. You can't avoid contact. Yeah. You can't avoid not tackling. So, and you just kind of, it's all a roll of the dice, but you can't get a team ready without getting physical. You just can't do it. And they have, to a certain extent. I just think now, okay, we've done this. Now it's time to, work on technique and recover. And we've put through the hard part. And now I don't think you're going to put anybody in too much of harm's way from a live tackling scenario, as he said, between now and the opener.
You have to find a balance. You can't really ignore either end of it, and you don't want to totally run to either extreme, but you've got to find that balance here. And obviously these guys are not newcomers to football, so they know what it's going to be like, but you just, after hanging out all summer, so to speak, you can't have that first big pop come in week one. I mean, You've got to, maybe for everybody but the quarterback, everybody's got to get a little taste. And I think, you hear that rolling into games week to week where you want to have that kind of have that first collision just to sort of get in that mode, if you will. And that's why they're sticking each other in a warm-up drill in some position groups prior to the game. I mean, it's part of it, but you've been near to this long enough to have seen sort of these eras transition from when it used to be junction boys. Hey, we killed a guy out there today, but it made his teammates better. It's part of the process, that kind of thing, to where we are now. So I hope they're striking the right balance, but it's kind of interesting to think about how every team probably handles it a little bit differently. And I just love to know, like, Nick Saban, how'd you do it? Because you think about some of the best out there, and I know that really good talent also just helps with this, but I sort of wonder what their process was over the years in going through this camp, because even the best talent, again, has got to acclimate to that as we get back to this time of year. Let's stick with a physical kind of theme, because we got a chance now to use one of my favorite football associated words, maulers. I want to get to Texas Tech offensive coordinator Mac Leftwich, Chris, who was being asked recently about his offensive line as they've progressed through fall camp. First, today's episode brought to you by DripDrop. And if you're trying to stay on top of your routine, whether that's workouts, long days on campus or on the job, or staying focused through back-to-back classes, meetings, or more, hydration is where it all starts, and that's where DripDrop comes in. DripDrop is doctor developed and scientifically proven for fast hydration, uses the perfect balance of sodium electrolytes and glucose to help your body absorb fluids quickly, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of a leading sports drink. My family's been going hard on the berry flavor, a game changer on those extra busy days. I've tried electrolyte powders before, but nothing tastes as good or works as fast as DripDrop. And right now, DripDrop is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. So just head to dripdrop.com and use our promo code LOCKEDONCollege. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONCollege for 20% off. And stock up now and be ready when the heat hits hard with DripDrop. I want to get to Texas Tech offensive coordinator Mac Leftwich, Chris, who was being asked recently about his offensive line as they've progressed through fall camp. And he was asked to sort of mention some guys in different kind of categories, whether it's a technician or more of a mauler, more fundamental, more road grader. And hey, I love some of those guys that are both, by the way. So we hope there's some crossover there for some of these individuals. But let's take a listen to Coach Leftwich talking about guys in that category. There's a couple of other things I picked up on in this answer that I thought were interesting beyond that context as well. I'll bring up here in just a moment. But let's take a listen to Texas Tech offensive coordinator Mac Leftwich talking O-line.
One guy who I've been really pleased with through fall camp is Howard Sampson. Really, both of our tackles, Jacob Pond, who's ended up having to play right tackle pretty much all fall camp, because of some injuries, and then Howard at the left side. I mean, they're going against real guys. I mean, that's 2 of the best edge rushers in the country every day, on both sides. And if your technique isn't good, you can get exposed quickly. And so I think those guys have gotten a lot better, just from that competition and having to elevate their play. And then I think, from a mauler standpoint, you think of like Will Jados, just a big body in there. He's been playing left guard for us. You get him and Howard on that left side, and you can really, move bodies. I think the right guard, Davion Carter, I think he's a guy that just kind of does it all, really. He's one of those guys you wouldn't expect it from him. He's 5'10", maybe 5'11" on a good day. I'll give him that. But he's a technician, and he's strong, and he uses the leverage to his advantage. So and then I think Sherry's had a great fall camp as well. And I'll give you from a technician too, a guy that I think's had a great fall camp and made huge strides. A young guy is Deantis Upshaw. He's a guy who's stepped in, and he's been going as our 2 left tackle. Pretty much all fall camp, and I think he's a guy that has a really high ceiling and has really been buying into the coaching. You can see his techniques improved a ton.
Chris, I want to circle back to Ponton and a guy I swear I've never heard of, but apparently is impressing as offensive coordinator this fall camp. But Davion Carter just can't avoid a shout out whenever we're talking O-line, and I thought it was really interesting also to hear Jados and Sampson kind of discussed in the context of maybe what that left side wall could really look like. He's talking about moving bodies, and that's something we love to hear.
Yeah, because I think Joey, whenever he's been asked about the offensive line, they just really talk about size and how much length that they have, and there's obviously some depth there now, and because you can goes back to the conversation we had at the end of last week about which is your preference, dominant defensive line, dominant offensive line. If you either way, but you can really control the game in many ways if you've got guys that can do various things up front as a unit, and it sounds like they may be running left quite a bit.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah,
it's worked out well for many teams, to just really build a wall on one side if you can.
And that was the Achilles heel last year, was the left side. So that sounds like that alone has been, seriously upgraded. Ponton, Daniel Sill, Deanthus Upshaw, as you heard Coach Leftwich say, Holton Hendricks. Trying to think if I'm missing anybody, but there's a lot. People forget you had a lot of new pieces that came in, and we've talked about a lot of those. But you've recruited really well, and it's nice to hear some of these names that are pushing and emerging. And that's the one thing I am going into the season I'm still concerned about. Now, again, we're 2 weeks out basically, but I'm still concerned about offensive line from the standpoint of, because did you hear Joey in the clip about the scrimmage talk about all the penalties?
Yep.
That's the one thing that, because Zambrano's been out, Scurry's been out. I'm trying to remember who else has missed time that Joey has tossed out there. I know that those aren't Cash Cleveland has been out. And so you're not being able to build a lot of continuity and chemistry with the group that you may or may not roll with, right? Yeah. Ponton may, in fact, start the season as your starting right tackle.
Let's get into that, because that was one of the biggest things that stood out to me about that clip is just how he just kind of offhand our tackles. And I know he's been in there, but I didn't really know, I guess, how we were trending towards live fire and who's going to be there. But
yeah,
what do you think?
Zambrano is, I think that, he missed most of last year, right? And then he missed the spring, and then he's had a back issue here. I talked to him on media day, and he seemed close to being ready to go. And it's funny, the conversation a while ago, he was talking about how quickly it would take him. He's, it's going to take me a bit, just because there's nothing like getting in football shape other than just playing football. Like, you can't do it. He's like, I've been around this thing, and this is a pro prospect, right? But so I don't know how quickly it would take him to acclimate once he does come back. And because he may have participated in the scrimmage on Saturday, or he's close to it. Because I think that when you hear from Coach Leftwich, that was actually stated toward the end of last week. So Zambrano may in fact be back and have started that process. But you just have had so many pieces kind of in and out, and not like any continuity. And we know that's what that position group is going to take. It's like all about chemistry. It's it's an orchestra. It's you're all in unison and together and understanding and all that stuff. But yeah, you've had some young pieces that have, I guess, stepped up and take advantage of some of these reps, and that's not going to hurt those guys at all.
Can I ask you about the Zambrano kind of Ponton dynamic, in the sense of, like, I don't know what plan A was at right tackle, if it's one or the other, or, hey, we just want to have a competition, but is Zambrano the kind of guy, he doesn't at least list as like demonstrably different from a measurable standpoint than Ponton, I don't think, but is he the kind of guy that just, hey, when they're healthy, that he's going to have a talent advantage or some other kind of advantage, the experience, or is there a legit, shot here, kind of a 50-50 comp when they do get healthy?
Good question. I mean, what he's got is the experience component. Ponton hadn't really, other than the bowl game and sprinkled in a little bit, Ponton is all potential. And I mean, this is a 6'8" or 6'7", 300+ pound redshirt freshman. He's good. He's the future at one of these tackle spots, right? But maybe it happens sooner than later, and then you give Zambrano some time to acclimate, and maybe by October it looks a little bit different. I'm asking the same Questions about Vinny Scurry as well. You're going to need all these guys, all of them. That's just the reality of it. And when do you need them, and are they ready to be used? Is the real question. Because I'm looking at this from the standpoint of over the next 4 weeks, it really points to that the end of that time frame when it really gets serious, and that's the Utah game. Yes, Oregon State will be a test, but it's all about Salt Lake City. And then there's a bye week immediately after that. So you've got some time here in some weeks to kind of build and acclimate and get guys back into the mix. But there's just not, to this point, you just kind of get the sense there's not just the chemistry where you want it. And I don't know if anybody would ever say it was, who was it last year? I guess it was Kansas State. Kansas State brought back all 5 starters on the offensive line, and then right out of the gate, their offensive line just wasn't great. And they moved some pieces around and was like, what is going on here? Which I thought was interesting. So you just never know, but ideally you would kind of have it all set, and they would be working together and going through, the trial and error of camp together, but that's just not been what's been on the old menu there.
All right, before we move on, I do want to ask you, what can you tell us about DeAntis Upshaw, a name that I have not heard in my ears before? With all due respect, wasn't familiar with your game. I apologize. Young guy, but apparently right there, as Coach Leftwich says, behind Howard Sampson's been standing out a little bit.
He was part of your recruiting class a couple of years ago. He's a kid out of the Metroplex. He's a redshirt freshman. He's like, I don't know, 6'5", 300 plus. These are some of these names that are – you want to leave them in the oven for another bit to let them cook a bit, but he's definitely taking advantage. Like who would be a backup left tackle in a game scenario? I could see Ponton over there. I could see Jados being moved over, and then you move in another guard. And again, some of this comes down to who is actually available and what's the scenario in the game. We just trying to get out of a game. We still needing to win it. But it's nice to hear something about a young player there that I think is, because he's seeing, as you heard Coach Leftwich say, when these backups are having to get pushed up from maybe like, say, a third team or even fourth team or scout team up into like second team, they are seeing really good players on the edge. Because while he may not be seeing David Bailey or Romello Height, he's still seeing like your Amir Washingtons and your Cheto Ophelis and some of these guys that are the next up and comer or the starters from last year. And so that's where I think probably Clay McGuire is like, man, this isn't really fair, in some of these practices. But as I've heard Joey talk about that in these media press conferences, like I have to tell Clay all the time, hey man, remember who these guys are going against. These are, because your defensive line depth is just it's pretty impressive. Because you haven't, knock on wood, you haven't had a lot of issues there with guys missing. You just had a lot of offensive line guys missing. So you've had to juggle it and mix and mash and kind of elevate everybody up. And they're still going against these high-level guys on the defensive line. So practice is probably, but that's only ultimately going to help them. But yeah, good for DeAnthis.
I'm glad you bring up the defensive line and even throw in an opportunity for a wood pun, because I want to wrap it up on that side of the football with our defensive coordinator. First, today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly feel the call of the stadium. That's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. And with the money you save on tickets, you can then splurge on foods, drinks, gear, and more. Gametime makes it all possible. And best of all, Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get the first pitch, and they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. And if you're like me, you get tired of endless scrolling trying to find the best deal, and that's why Gametime's Zone Deals is the go-to move, since it automatically picks the best seats in your section for you at the best price. And as always, you can get a view from your seat right there in the app, so before you buy, you know exactly what you're going to see. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use our code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, Locked On College, for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets at the lowest price, guaranteed. Shill Wood, of course, on the scene for the first time, just like Mac Leftwich, as we're rolling into 2025. And Coach Wood recently asked about some of those guys up front. But overall, really the newcomers in general that have been added to his side of the ball. Here's defensive coordinator Shill Wood.
We haven't missed a beat with anything since the day I got on campus. It's just been one team, one heartbeat. That's what I've witnessed. I think everybody's new to me, but from a guy walking in here in December, and then we start the semester off back in January and roll through the spring and summer and into fall camp, these guys have been a team. And whether it's returning guys, I do think that they've done a great job of embracing all the new players that we have, freshmen, transfers, whatever the case may be. But I would, if you didn't tell me that some of our new players that were transfers were actually transfers coming in, I wouldn't know, because they just look like they've been a part of the culture and have assimilated really well. And I think that speaks to their character, speaks to how our guys that have been here before have welcomed them with open arms. And they've just all been about football, doing the best that they can do to be the best that they can be, great attitudes, great work ethic, and that's been fun to be a part of.
I might take a guess, Chris. Some of that may have to do with some of the seasoning and age on these guys you brought in. I mean, we've talked about a ton trying to find the right profile of guy, and probably that part's helped a little bit with kind of like he talks about the acclimation, I guess.
And when we touched on this a little bit last week, there's always a portion of a guy's career where it kind of like he starts to see what the end looks like and how seriously they need to take it if you're trying to play at the next level. Well, you brought in a lot of guys that I think you've already vetted that are in that phase or have already transitioned into that phase. And I think that in credit to like the Jacob Rodriguez's and the Ben Roberts's and the John Curry's and the Mo Horns and all of those defensive line guys that were here last year for like welcoming in that group, and credit to Coach Wood, because I think that he's been able to mesh it all together and they're deep. I think he's just turned these guys loose, and I think people are going to like they may in fact like this defense or be able to root for them quite a bit. And shockingly, sarcasm here, this defense may win you a game or four this year.
I'll take 10.
I know. Well, that too. Yeah. I mean, they're going to be a significant reason why you are really good this year. And it's a bit of a first around here.
10-2, and we're winning them all 7-6. And if you complain, I swear to God, I'm coming for you. Banned, blocked, ejected from the Locked On Texas Tech fam family if that happens. Can you imagine, Chris, a season dominated by a defense, not for worse, but for better? Because we've had storylines that have been dominated by defenses like, damn, how do we keep losing games? We're scoring 45. But hopefully that's not going to be the case here, yet still pairing some 45-point efforts with some of that tremendous, hopefully, defensive impact. All right, before we get out of here, Chris, it's been a couple of days. Red Raiders near and far have had to process this. And since we last convened, we have not had a chance to actually discuss it. But, of course, I got to put it to you and see how you're feeling about what was rolled out to wrap up last week in the form of some new fall fashion. If you haven't seen it just yet, I'll throw it up on the screen for those watching on YouTube. But it is a take on a 100-year anniversary edition of a Texas Tech football uniform. And Chris, it's getting 5 stars from me and probably some cash as well from my family. How'd you like them?
Yeah, I mean, Barron first hinted at this at Big 12 Media Days in, I guess that was in Frisco, when he was like, yeah, we've got a throwback. It's kind of a 100-year thing. And so that's when everybody kind of, and we've been asked about uniforms, and I just kind of like would smile because I knew something was coming down the pike. And these look great. I mean, it pulls a little bit from different eras and kind of meshes it together. It's clearly like a tip of the cap to like your football program, and very much a throwback with an old double T, some stars on the helmets that they used. I think it was in the 70s, and just a nice clean look. And it seems like it's been overwhelmingly positive have been the reactions there. And you're right, like to Calvin's point, as you said, there's a whole line of product out there now, not just jerseys, but hats, sweatshirts, t-shirts, and all that. But Adidas did this for Kansas, Mississippi State, South Carolina. I'm trying to make all the different teams that had kind of a throwback, and this was Tech's version of it, but it came out, I guess, Thursday night, and it looks great. I mean, you're going to wear these against Kansas, I believe, in October at home, and I hope they kind of keep this thing around because it looks awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. For simplicity's sake, finally, we're putting something out there, and I know that there is a multi-color stripe down the pant, so let's just not think about that when we're thinking simplicity. But nonetheless, we got back to a double T that I never thought I'd see us get back to, Chris. I have for a long time wanted to return to the double T and do away with the 3D beveled version, which, by the way, one has made an appearance on a practice field if you hadn't seen that, so look out. But this is even a little further back. I think the last time I saw a team utilizing this double T where the smaller one's not actually even inset, it's just one solid piece, was on a Texas Tech baseball uniform, like maybe 80s or I mean, it's been a while. But I thought it was really cool that they brought that one back, and the shoulder patch as it relates to what used to be on the front of a Texas Tech football uniform 100 years ago, just as good as it gets. And I'm getting big time Mean Machine vibes. And I'm talking the original longest yard look. You know what I'm saying? I've loved that forever. So I'm glad we're embracing that as well.
I love that. The Mean Machine. That's
hopefully some of that personality, by the way, too.
No doubt. Minus all the committed crimes that some of those guys,
the roundhouse kicks and the assault.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, no, I'm here for uniform talk anytime. I know fans love it, and you had I also think there's a chance you could still see those galvanized, the Pat Mahomes uniforms again at some point this year. I don't know when that would be, if it's home or away or whatever, but I think that'll be kind of a thing. But yeah, this is they've already announced that this will be worn in the Kansas game. So get your tickets now and go buy your replica jersey out there at various outlets.
I know many will. I can hear the registers ringing already all over the place. So well done by Adidas and those who contributed to that. And
Zane Perry. Yeah, Zane Perry, man. That's he's the GOAT, man. He's heavily involved, him and Kamen, your equipment guys. But yeah, I think Zane's just he doesn't get near the credit he deserves for just kind of how all that comes to be and the thought process and putting it all together and kind of researching from years gone by and finding stuff like, okay, and then presenting it to Adidas, and they kind of, or Under Armour used to be, because all the throwbacks in the various eras have all been so legit. I've loved every version of what we've seen. Yeah.
Yeah, and this kind of a new concoction, like a throwback as a new look in a way, is sort of cool to think about. I just always thought it was sort of ironic. Under Armour, to me's best look they gave us was one we already had like 30 years before they existed as a company. But nonetheless, those days are over. So we're trending in the right direction. We've thrown it back, but with a totally new creation that I think has generally been very, very well received, which is always noteworthy because that's rarely the case when we're talking fall fashion. All right, Chris, thank you for strapping on your fashion hat for just a moment. We got to get out of here. We're out of time. I appreciate yours as always. Enjoyed it, man, and looking forward to the next one. We'll see you then.
We're inside 2 weeks, people. We got a big kickoff luncheon coming up this week. We've got you got football coming up this weekend. The Big 12 games, 3 Big 12 teams will be in action. So yeah, not long now. But and thank you for subscribing out there to all the folks that I met. My man Eric at the grocery store over the weekend that listens to you and I. So shout out to Eric. Appreciate him saying hello, and we'll talk to everybody next time. Keep hope alive.
Come on, E, let's go. Join up, saddle up. Let's ride. It's going to be a wild one. I think we're already to a point where now we will not have a college football or basketball less weekend until April of 2026. So let's strap in, buckle up. There'll be ups, there'll be downs, but we'll be here along the way. There's no question about that. All right, Chris, thank you. And thank you all out there for joining us. Once again, get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. Thanks to the Everydayers for always riding along. And hit the show notes and find a link to a free 14-day trial if you're interested in becoming a member of the Matador Mob. That's your direct line to Chris and myself with one-on-one text sent straight to your phone. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks as always for the time. We hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.